My gentlemen, hello.
Hello, guys. Welcome to the seventh episode.
Episode number 7.
If you're here for the seventh time, we love and appreciate you.
Yes. Welcome to the deployment episode. Boom.
Did you deploy anything recently? This week?
Yeah, of course. Deployed stuff Tuesday and I'm deploying stuff tomorrow.
Oh wow,
Oh yeah.
man, you guys are still doing those back-to-back deployments?
So I mean what we're trying to get towards is like a lot of deployments. Every little thing should be a deployment, not lumping a bunch of stuff together for a big deployment.
Okay. But that means you have to wake up super early, like a lot.
No, not so much anymore because we have our deployment time down to sub 3 minutes, so we can get up a little later, like 6, 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to, because what Steve B is talking about, in case you don't know, is um, we used to deploy super early in the morning so that we would have the least amount of people on the site. And I mean, technically, I would think eventually that could also just happen like in the middle of the night type of thing. But we kind of weren't in a great place with QA at the time. So we needed to be like developers attending the releases type of thing.
Okay. So QA has gotten a lot better.
Oh, yeah. Yep. I mean, that's the goal, I guess, probably on every development team is to improve and get to a place. I mean, I would think like, and this can be kind of something we get into, is the ideal like Magento 2 deployment situation, because I don't think like, I don't know. Are you aiming at zero downtime? Is that something that's even on your radar? Or
Yeah. I mean, it's something being on a website that I'm working on a website that uses Magento Cloud, and because like they kind of they they kind of push for that for you to set up your environment for zero downtime deployment. And like I've spent a lot of time in like the cloud Slack channel, and everybody keeps saying, "Oh, why your website?" Basically, people are saying your customers should never see a maintenance page, right? Um, so yeah, it's something that I've thought about. I think you need to um, what you need your deployment needs to be less than 5 minutes or something in order for from the customer perspective for them to not notice that a deployment has occurred. Forget what the exact number is. I mean, is that what you guys are doing, or
well,
or
I
you're just
guess
deploying, and since it's short, even though people see a maintenance window, you don't care?
I don't understand what you're asking. So you're saying if you deploy in less than 5 minutes, people don't see a maintenance page?
Yeah, there's this thing called zero. You just mentioned it, zero downtime deployment. And yeah, you can deploy code to the site if someone's checking out.
Oh yeah,
Let's see.
but
They
not database.
hmm?
You can't update the database.
What do you mean update the database?
Like run setup upgrade and like add and remove tables, prune.
Well, so whatever transaction the customer is in the middle of if the customer is in the middle of a transaction, they'll notice a slight delay, but um, basically they won't it's quick enough that they don't notice that there's maintenance going on. That's the whole plan. And that's the whole idea.
So is it literally like there's two versions of your app running at the same time, and you know that customer is still in version A?
No.
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 Okay.
Um, I mean, I haven't personally implemented it, but it's something that Magento Cloud advises. And I thought that's what you were asking though. Maybe
So
I misheard your question.
no, I asked you about zero downtime deployment, but um, as far as I know, it's basically not possible. Like, I mean, if you are running on a single server, right? You know, it doesn't have multiple web heads involved.
Hmm.
Um, I think you can get pretty close, but as far as I know, I don't know that Magento, like obviously you can do it if you're just deploying code. You can you can deploy like changes to your code base, like JavaScript, CSS, even XML, uh, and all that stuff, fine without taking the site down. Like we could do that right now. But the thing that I don't think exists, and I could be wrong, you obviously have some Magento Cloud experience that I'm not familiar with, is
I mean, don't,
that
I mean, don't
let's
quote me. Like
no, okay,
I
I'll
haven't
just say
implemented
though,
it myself.
yeah, let's say you're running patches
uh,
or your modules, like let's say you're installing a new module, right?
yeah,
That module will probably add things to the database, um, a table for itself to store some data or whatever, and it needs to run setup upgrade, and that can't happen while the maintenance page isn't showing, right? Because um, so, and I could be wrong. Like there could be ways to do this, but
yeah. I don't want to pull up the documentation and just start reading at this point, but um, we'll get that cleared up after
yeah,
after the
sure.
podcast.
And I think like so in my experience, like most apps have or websites have kind of a thing that is called like scheduled downtime, and you would do those big updates like that you need to take the site offline for during that maintenance window. It's like, oh, during this time we're going to be down. Also, if a site doesn't have a ton of traffic, um, you might just do it whenever. You know, if you have to take the site down for 3 minutes to launch a new module or do scheduled, a patch, then that's what you do. Um, Now, the thing, like, because again, like, I don't know necessarily that for Magento, like CI CD exists. Like, can you set up a build deployment pipeline and then just, let's say something gets merged to master, it deploys by itself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. That Magento Cloud has that set up actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the site doesn't ever go offline to do that?
Well, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is a CI/CD process, a pipeline. You anything you merge into the cloud, one of the cloud branches automatically gets deployed to whatever environment, right? And each environment is linked to a branch, right? So if you have a branch named staging, then if you merge anything into there, it's automatically going to get deployed to the staging environment.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if you can like control when that happens, or is it literally just you merged it, it's going to happen now?
Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. If you merge it in, it's going to happen right now. So you can, instead of merging directly into Magento Cloud's repo, you can link your own repo, like on GitHub or Bitbucket, and then you can like manually set trigger the deployment and control it that way. But if you merge into their repo, uh, it's going to trigger a deployment automatically, and you can't control that. but
Interesting.
it puts the site in maintenance mode. It'll flush the cache, take it out of maintenance mode, run setup upgrade, set up DI compile. It'll pre-warm the caches after the deployment. It basically does everything for you.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're actually gonna launch a cache warmer probably next week. Amnesty has a module that we're gonna
Nice.
use. Yeah, can't be having cold caches, man.
Warm them up.
Warm them up. Yeah,
Best, especially during the winter, we need the site nice and warm.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, um, for me, I would think at the very least a normal, maybe not normal, but a better cache situation would be like if you request a page with a cold cache, you still get the old cached version of that page, but
Mm-hmm.
it just kicks off a process to rewarm it, right?
Hmm. So, but I mean, if you get the old version of the page, there could be like real, depending on how much that page was changed, there could be issues there, right?
Mm, I don't think so because, well, okay, so if um, I guess yes, there could be issues there.
Yeah,
Um, like you're saying, like if we launch some new code and the JavaScript is trying to make a call to an endpoint that's no longer there,
exactly.
something like that. Yeah, um, yeah, that could be bad. And that was kind of one of the things I was talking about too. Like when I was saying, um, there could be a deployment scenario where you have two versions of the app running at the same time.
Hmm.
And app A uh, is the old one and app B is the new one. Now, as long as like, because the complication there is the different web heads. So what you don't want is for if um, person A is on app A and they're doing something, right? You don't want suddenly them to switch to a different web head and be working on app B. That would screw everything up. But if you could, I mean, I think you could basically turn on sticky webhead sessions, and keep people on the app they're supposed to be on.
Yeah.
And in that scenario, I believe you could theoretically have a true blue green, like site doesn't go offline. All orders are taken, and app A and app B are both interacting with the database. Well, so that's a tough one too because the database. Yeah, I mean, it's this is an interesting conversation definitely for a front end person to be having. I know like enough to be dangerous, and probably I'm not sounding super smart on this topic, but hey, gentlemen, we just got to talk about everything.
Well, yeah, I mean, I uh I haven't I haven't experimented with a blue green deployment process, and I'm not familiar. Like I haven't attempted myself the Magento zero downtime deployment, even though it's heavily pushed on the Magento Cloud Slack channel. So I mean, I'll better be able to like give you more details regarding how that works once I kind of dabble with that. Um, I mean, to your point, you were saying you were saying that it's possibly, just switching the active web heads. I mean, every Magento Cloud store comes with at least three, right? 3 servers for the same website, so they could possibly be doing that in order to allow for zero downtime deployments. Again, not really sure about all the details about how that's implemented. We'll probably bring that up on a future podcast just to update what I've found on like regarding how they implement it.
No, I found it. I pulled it up. So they say during the deployment process, all connections queue up for 5 minutes, preserving any active sessions and pending actions, such as adding to the cart checkout. After deployment, the queue is released and the connections continue without interruption. To use this connection hold to your advantage and reduced deployment to zero, they put zero in like quotes, zero downtime. I don't know why. It's like they're using the word zero like it doesn't actually mean zero, but use the following steps to reduce the amount of times, blah, blah, blah.
It's a sneaky zero.
I don't know. Yeah. Okay, it says, Magento Commerce Cloud runs in maintenance mode during the deployment phase, which takes your site offline until the deployment is complete. The length of time your production site is in maintenance mode depends on the size of the site, the number of changes applied during the deployment, and the configuration of static content deployment. It is possible to configure a project so it deploys with zero downtime effect. So, yeah, because I mean, like in theory too, like I've done this in the past. I once on a Magento 1 site, I built an Angular app as the maintenance page. So like if you came to the site, the maintenance page looked just like the Magento site, right? And like the version I did was you could browse the whole catalog. So it had like a feed. I would export a feed of the product catalog to like some S3 bucket. And then while the site was offline, the Angular app would pull from that feed and show all the products and the images and all that. So my version only had like a countdown clock. It was like, whatever, a 5-minute countdown. I was like, the site will be right back. Continue to browse the catalog in the meantime. Now, I could have continued development. I didn't have the go-ahead from my tech lead at the time, but I could have made it so I built a queue and those queued orders would then be put, into Magento when the site came back online. So that would be like a zero downtime effect. Magento 1, I think you could have done actual zero downtime anyway, but that's kind of what this sounds like to me is, somehow they are keeping the old version alive for the users that are on it. And then, the site goes into maintenance mode, sure, and the deployment happens 5 minutes or less, I guess, is their thing. And then whatever actions were taken by those users on the old version of the site are then pushed or queued, like, I guess, RabbitMQ.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how they're implementing this queue, where the queue exists, all that, but
it's probably they built like RabbitMQ or like Amazon has a queuing system. It's probably not a part of Magento.
Yeah.
What's Amazon's queue? It's like probably called like really simple queue or something. I think they call everything like simple SQS, simple queuing service. Yeah. So, I mean, they probably just use some kind of queue. And that's actually something I'm looking into for the holidays. I don't know. We're going to finish our load testing soon for Black Friday and all that fun stuff for sales. And just depending on, how much load our site can take, it's possible we could add a queue. So orders over a certain threshold get put into a queue.
Oh wow, you guys are making a lot of changes.
I mean, it's not, it's possible our hardware and just the infrastructure will hold up to the load test, and we're not going to worry. But it's also possible that I don't know. We'll see. It's
What,
always.
what
I will say this: do load testing, people. Make sure you're ready.
I was just gonna say, well, luckily Magento Cloud like gives automatically upgrades and based off of whatever metrics that they have, they'll give you additional resources for your site during the
It's like
holiday.
auto scaling.
Yeah.
Cool.
Um, but what are you guys doing for? What are you guys using for load testing?
JMeter.
JMeter. Okay.
Yeah,
Was
and I
it
think. Go ahead.
was it easy to implement? How much was the effort there?
I don't like the word easy ever. I will say I think it was pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
Um, basically you have to set up a JMeter server that's going
Mm-hmm.
to run the test. Then, you kind of have to like plan how are you going to, because sure, you can do load testing and just see how many people can hit your site at once. That to me is not very interesting. Like, okay, like you can have this many people surfing the site. What to me, you kind of need to know how many orders can be placed at once,
Yeah.
or how many like sustained, how much ordering can we deal with?
Over
Um,
a sustained period of time.
yeah, because that's where you get the queries, and it's not really you're not caching things in there. That can melt, that can cause deadlocks and craziness. So you kind of want to know like, well, you have to set up. I mean, JMeter doesn't obviously come out of the box with like, this is how you can test Magento checkout. So you kind of have to get into like, oh, okay, are we going to hammer the API endpoint for REST? Are we going to set up like a module that places an order and just hammer that endpoint? Or, you know, you just have to figure out what is an acceptable way. The other thing is that you can integrate JMeter with Selenium. It's not, I don't know if it's super recommended or whatever, but you can actually set up Selenium to be running with, JMeter runs the Selenium test, headless Chrome, and actually clicks the buttons and does the actual checkout. And you can run a bunch of them in parallel and just hammer your site with that.
I definitely think the approach with Selenium actually clicking the buttons and interacting with the front end is closer to what really happens, right?
Oh yeah.
But definitely hammering um, those APIs directly. There's and seeing how many orders can go through, how the database responds and stuff like that. There's definitely some benefit to doing that.
Yeah. I mean, usually I would think like you would get out of that, like, oh, we need to optimize these queries, or we need to increase our server capacity, or we need to have the ability for this thing to auto increase.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, auto increase into infinity, and then see the Amazon or the bill next to the following month.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing that I worry about, and I mean, maybe I'm just worrying for no reason, is
Yeah,
if a site gets under load and it starts to get to the point where you can't use the site anymore, and it's not like you're under attack, right? It's orders. So you
mhm.
want it to continue.
We're being attacked by orders.
Yeah, and I've seen it before. It's like the worst feeling in the world, because what will happen is marketing does a really successful thing, and then the site just starts to crawl, and they're like, "What the hell? I can't believe it! Like we're doing so good. There's so many people on the site, and nobody can use it." So you kind of get into that, like, well, what you don't want to have to do is restart MySQL, dump a bunch of orders in the queue, resize the instance or whatever. RDS has to get bigger. It's going to take 20 minutes. The site's going to be offline. People will freak out. So
Yeah.
you know, you just, I mean, that's the big cautionary tale of this. I know we're doing deployments, not load testing, but it just, do your load testing, see ahead of time. We're actually probably running a bit late doing it right now, but give yourself a month or two usually before whatever big sale, and just see, what kind of load the site can take, and if you're comfortable with kind of what it can do, and if not, what are you going to do about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think load testing is definitely a part of deployment though, right? Because you can make changes that could severely impact performance. Um,
That's a good
right?
point.
If you add some new crons, or start querying the database to do some fancy stuff in a new module, maybe you want to see how maybe it works perfectly on local because it's just you, right? But we add like two more people and the site crashes. So, there's definitely that. And then what I an issue that I had before was like the databases was fine, everything was fine. It was actually a a, a third party service that worked fine locally, but once we made too many requests to it in production, it just started like timing out or taking way too long to respond, and it caused a huge issue. So um, load testing is definitely uh, a good thing to do pre-deployment, right?
Definitely.
I mean, what other than doing some load testing, what else do you recommend to make sure you have a successful deployment?
Well, I mean, the big thing is, at first, keep it simple. Like, literally learning something, and especially something complex like a Magento 2 deployment, you're going to want to know kind of each thing that's happening along the way, because there's a lot of, well, I don't want to say there's a lot of, but you will come across probably automated things that are doing everything for you.
Mm-hmm.
And especially, I mean, if you're in the Magento Cloud world, that's going to be to the extreme. But um, so you might have like DeployBot or something um, making a build for you, right? And that build process creates this uh, build. It's everything, right? And then when that's done, like it pulls the Git repo, and it runs all the commands, everything that needs to happen for the build, and then at the very end, it switches your symlink, right, from the main old current directory to the new whatever current directory. Um, Now, what you kind of want to have in mind, though, while all that's happening, is that you literally could have used the command line to go to the current directory, pull or put the site in maintenance mode, right? Pull your changes from your repo, and then run setup upgrade and run each command yourself. You could have done that, and that's what this thing is basically doing. You don't want there to be like under the hood magic that you aren't sure, right? Because then at some point the thing isn't going to work. I mean, that happens, right? So
Yeah.
you're going to have your deployment script or whatever kind of fall over, and you want to kind of be able to say to yourself, okay, let me walk through this and what's all happening here.
Yeah. I mean, good point there. You kind of have to, just because it's automated doesn't mean you can forget it, right? I know, like for example, the Composer install to get your vendor directory, that's a part of the deployment process. And this didn't happen during a deployment, but locally, I didn't have the version of of Composer locked. So right, I was just running whatever the command is to. I think you just you clone the repo or something like that. But then I have it I have it automated. Whenever I recreate my local environment, it just pulls Composer, right? But the other day, what happened was, I don't know if we recently went to Composer 2.0 or something like that. I'm like keeping up with it, but essentially, I Composer 2.0 point something got automatically installed, and there I am trying to run Composer install to install my Magento my Magento site locally, and I'm just getting a whole bunch of errors, right? If you're on a deployment, or maybe if you created a process and you kind of didn't lock in the version of Composer that you're using and something like that happens, you might just start to panic, right? Especially if it's on the production website. Yeah, lucky enough,
Yeah.
I just had to downgrade to Composer 1, ran Composer install again, and then I was back in business. But just to speak to, you know, when you're creating a deployment or an automated deployment process, you have to be aware of the things that can change and where things can break, what each step means. Um, I've done it so much on my local environment, and like broken and fixed so many things that my local environment is pretty close to production. And I do run into some issues where it's not, but it's pretty close to production. So I kind of understand that process like the back of my hand. If I see a certain error, I'll be like, well, okay, Composer didn't run. Okay, that one means something's wrong with Nginx, or oh, something's happening with the DB because on this step it's trying, setup upgrade has already cleared all the generated files. So right now it's trying to update the tables, right, to put in the new, I don't know, module versions or whatever. So if it's taking really long, there must be something wrong with the DB, right? Run show processes in MySQL, and it'll show you there's probably a whole bunch of processes sleeping for because one is taking super long or whatever. But yeah, good point there. What else do you think is absolutely crucial, even like before the deployment? What are you doing, right? If all the tech is sound, all the process, at least the build and deployment process is ironed out. You said testing was one thing. What else are you doing before actually hitting the button?
Yeah, I mean, we have before something goes to QA, we have like a peer review process. So it's like cross-checked by other developers. So it's like a QA step before QA. And then also code review from a tech lead to make sure that it makes sense from a high level. And then after something individually has passed QA, we're doing like smoke tests or regression using some automated stuff for running through a bunch of
Secret?
yeah. I mean it's Selenium
Okay.
tests, and it runs through a bunch of test cases that we've seen need to be tested for every build. Um, we're not into like unit testing at this point, but I would imagine probably eventually we'll get to the M2F Magento testing framework thing.
Yeah, that just adds so much more time to the development process, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, unit tests would be nice to have eventually. I'd like to eventually get to the point where we are doing, test-driven development would be awesome. Um, but I, I think probably our next big thing is going to be looking into the whole headless PWA situation. So it might not be uh, something that's going to be used like on the front end. That'll be probably something else.
Okay. Okay. And for your last few deployments, have what I noticed is like right before the scheduled um, release, usually something scary just pops up at the last minute, or the next day you notice something that just looks weird.
Yeah.
Has that happened in the last couple of deployments that you have?
No. Mm-mm. I
No.
mean, no. I mean, we're running pretty solid at this point. Like,
Mhm.
the stuff we're releasing basically is exactly what we intended to release. Sometimes, like a mystery bug will appear, but it's the type of thing where it's like that couldn't have been something we found during testing. So it's like a
Testing,
third
right? It can
party
only
or
happen in production.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so yeah, I mean, the other day I had this weird issue post deployment where we switched from flat from flat tables to just EAV, right? Based off of Magento's recommendation. I don't know if I'd brought it up before, but they don't recommend that you use flat tables anymore. Um,
Yeah, you talk about that all the time.
but 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 yeah, I what happened was for some reason the breadcrumb links weren't showing after I made that change. Like, and it worked. The thing is, it had happened and during testing, but we couldn't find out. We didn't know what the hell happened. It just went away, and we kept on testing. We couldn't reproduce it. And then after the deployment, we're doing some testing, and we're like, man, these links are like the link is there, but it's just text. Can't click on. Well, it's not. The link isn't there. The breadcrumb's there, but it's not a link, right? And we're just clicking, clicking, clicking. So post deployment, I wasted like an hour to like 45 minutes to an hour just trying to figure out what's going on, and it just turns out that it was this admin configuration. That's the only thing. It was just that we turned off flat tables, um, and I think the reason it went away on staging was because we updated our staging database, and we forgot or we didn't disable flat tables, right? So then the issue looked like it went away. But anyway, that was pretty annoying. I hate when stuff like that happens. But like you said, generally speaking, on our side, we haven't seen much too much craziness post deployment. Every once in a while, like stuff like that'll happen.
Yeah, and I mean, I think probably for us, one of the things that's really helped is getting our downtime to be shorter because what that allows us to do is deploy more often. And
Mm-hmm.
what that allows us to do is just do these little surgical things. And it's not like, we're releasing 5 bug fixes and 2 features because we only release every other week, right? We're
Yeah, yeah,
releasing several times a week. We're getting our little things out there. And if something happens, it's like very precise and it's like, oh, it's this. And maybe we'll go onto the prod and just change whatever code was affected. And that way we do a hot fix the next morning. And so it's kind of a domino effect of like, if you can have shorter downtime or even ideally zero downtime, then you can release a lot and you can make your releases really small and
yeah,
precise. And that really leads to less
yeah,
bugs on production.
yeah. What's annoying is when you've like merged everything into this release candidate, and then there's this one thing that can't go anymore, and now it's like, how the hell do I get this crap out of here? Or
So
you don't know which particular thing caused the issue.
yeah, I mean what we're
Trying
doing,
to isolate.
yeah,
Huh?
what we're doing for that is basically we will make we have a bash script
Hmm.
that will take a bunch of branches and turn them into a release candidate. So um, that bash script is really super useful because what we can do is we'll take, you know, let's say 5 branches, right? I
Hmm.
just run the bash command. It makes the release candidate, and then let's say we need to add a new ticket. It's like, oh, this one's done. It needs to go up too. So I'll run that again, but I do the release candidate v2. And let's say that ticket that I added messed everything up and it needs to come back out. Well, I can either just use the previous version branch that was already made, or I can run the little bash command again, make a v3, um, and just try to, I mean, because like obviously you don't need the bash part of this to do what I'm talking about. It just gets a little annoying to be like um, creating new release candidates for master and then merging 5 things into it. Um,
Yeah, takes out a lot. It's tedious and just so painful.
yeah, I could paste a little bash into the description if you guys want to see it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just like taking down all the notes. I'm like, this is what I should be doing. J meter.
JMeter, dude. Yeah, and I mean that's not the only one. Like they have a software as a service version called BlazeMeter
Hmm.
that it's already all built out. Like you literally just point this thing at your site and write some tests and you're good to go. You don't have to use like um, the command line and or whatever. Build a server out. It's all point and
Yeah.
click on BlazeMeter. It's like JMeter, but you know,
Yeah,
JMeter for
yeah.
Dummies. Is that
You say what?
is that PC? JMeter for Dummies.
Yeah.
Oh man.
um, but yeah, yeah. I like that. I like that idea. If you can, if it's not proprietary information, I'd like to take a look at that. That.
Yeah, and I mean, like even without the little script, like obviously you can probably out there if I'm not able to post it, I will try to. But you can use the methodology of like, okay, um,
If you
this
don't get
release
it, it's not
candidate
my fault.
has these 4 in it, so I'm gonna make that branch with these 4. But what you don't want to do is ever have a developer then branch off of that release candidate, right? Like that will screw everything up. So I mean, you can do like cherry pick is a git command that we've used too, where it's like I just need these commits from that other branch.
Yeah, that's a tedious and painful process also, but I mean it's pretty clean though,
Yeah.
because then you don't have to worry about, oh, this branch had all this other crap in it because it was based off of this other branch that has all this crap that I don't want, but I want this particular commit. So Git cherry pick is definitely dope. I mean, what's your like branching strategy though?
Mm, like how do you mean?
Like, I mean, so you're saying they don't. So I'm saying in order to keep isolate potential issues, how are you creating? Um, where are people branching off of, basically?
Branch off a master,
Okay.
always. And we're after a deployment, like soon after, within like a half an hour, we're merging release candidates back into master. So it's not you don't have very long where it's like
Oh
something's
wow,
not
an hour later.
not even. Yeah, just like right away.
Wow.
Yeah, because like we're to the point where we're just like, look, if there's some problem or whatever, look, we already turned the site back on. It's running out there. We're gonna have to do a hot fix or whatever anyway. We'll merge that back into master too. Like this thing is out there. It is master basically.
You're just committing to it.
Yeah, because there's no rolling back. Like you can't once something is out there, right? Like it's unless it's just code, right? Like most
That's
of
all
our
I say.
yeah.
If it's just code, you can pull it back. If it's
Yeah.
if it's database changes, then it gets a little bit more complicated.
It's not complicated. You can't pull it back. It's very simple. It's out there. It lives there. It is your site now.
Well, that's how it's gonna be now.
Yeah, and if there's a problem, like even with the code, it's like, well, I, I know that like the ideal scenario I used to live under was like, oh, let's wait to merge it to master, because if we do that, then everything gets confusing and it's all in there. But I mean, we've just never ever had that actually happen, and it's been like more than a year now. So
One would.
it's just like we're not living in the theory anymore. We're just doing what actually happens every time, which is we're just going to merge it in and continue on forward.
No, I'm not sure where I maybe I'm just like superstitious. I'm like, maybe we should wait. Maybe there's some scenario where like that'll come back and bite me in the butt if I just go ahead and just merge the release into everything right away.
Yeah, and I mean, I would say if you don't have a bunch of developers that are like trying to get their code ready for a next release already, then you don't need to do it. You could wait a day, you know.
I mean, the thing is though, in the scenario, in the case where, I don't know, if you've merged the release into master, and there's like this crazy bug on production, and you need to revert back to the previous code state or however you want to call it, how would you like deal with that scenario?
Well,
What if a
just put the
hot fix
last
was
build
going to
up,
take
you
long?
know, just re-release the last build.
Okay.
Like it, if that's the emergency situation, you know, like we have all the builds, but even in that case, like you can't, you cannot just take the last version of your release.
Well, yeah, if there's database changes, no.
It's 99% of the time. I mean, that's I guess a scenario we've been thinking about too, of like, let's have different kinds of releases where we're grouping just code changes and then ones that are database ones, so that we
Yeah.
could possibly do that.
Yeah.
Like even have the option, but we're just not there. I mean, at this point, our releases are kind of more feature based and like these bugs are ready or whatever. So kind of grouping them in that way to be safe for a scenario that has never happened. It's just like,
Yeah. I'm lucky that the last few deployments that I've had, well, with the exception of obviously upgrading my Magento version, there were no database changes. So if anything, if any code needed to be pushed, I don't know if we released some JavaScript code or PHP code that was doing some fanciness on the site and we needed to roll back, it would be pretty simple. But you guys have a bigger team, so obviously more significant changes can happen in each release. But you're saying you break them down into chunks also. But
oh yeah.
yeah,
Plus,
and the thing is, you guys have access to the build. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say, have you ever rolled anything back?
Yes, 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 yes. Something that worked in production. I'm sorry, it worked in staging. It worked locally, but in production, uh, because of the amount of load, it basically we were. It's the same scenario that I brought up. We were making too many requests to a third party service, and the response started to lag. And that response, the response we were getting from them, not from them, because it's also, okay. Anyway, the response impacted pricing of products, right? So if people can't get if Magento can't price the products, then obviously you're going to have like checkout issues and issues with on the PDP and et cetera, et cetera. So it didn't really break anything, but because we currently don't have a means to do load testing, and because we're a small team, and it's gonna like I'm gonna have to personally take on that effort to make that happen, on top of all the other crap that I'm doing. Yeah, that happened, but all we did was just release the previous version of the code, because we didn't merge the release into it yet, and our problems went away like that. So yeah, that's my thought. Again, though, you can't do that if you made database changes.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that idea. You can do it if you haven't turned the site back online yet, because the idea there is like, well, we made a database backup right before we did this. So since there's no like new orders yet because the site's offline, if we release our code and then notice some horrible bug, we could do a full reset, which is set the database back and the code back.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not strictly true that if there are database changes that you can't roll back, right? If you
Right.
created like brand new tables that don't touch any of the core tables, and you don't have any dependencies, and you could just rip those out independently, and you could roll that back.
Yeah, and
But
if you're adding like if your patch file updated some CMS block or page, roll it back. I mean, you're just gonna have that updated page. So,
yeah,
like, I mean,
yeah. But,
although, well, I don't know.
yeah, that's a data change. It wouldn't have anything. You just have to go in there and put in those changes and those CMS changes on your own.
Yeah.
If you uh, pull them out.
All right, dude. Well, I think we dug to the bottom of deployments. It was a great talk, as
Yeah.
per usual.
Yeah, I think this one we got into a little bit more of the technical side of things this summer.
Finally,
Yeah.
been dying to talk tech with you, man.
Zero downtime. That's the way.
Yeah, it
Let's
doesn't
buy a shirt that
exist.
says zero downtime.
It's not real. I can see it. I can see it here on Magento clouds.
Zero downtime in quotes.
Oh, yeah, zero. It's like a parental. Like, oh, it wasn't quotes. Sorry, it's italic. Zero. Like what?
Zero asterisk.
I don't know. I'm looking into this though. There's a build phase, a deployment phase, blah blah blah. Okay, cool, man. Good job. Like and subscribe. Smash that like button. Click the bell.
Yeah. What Steve T said. Again, thank you guys. We'll see you on the next one.
Bye.